Good afternoon. I'm calling back to session the recessed meeting of the Portland City Council. It's 2:01 on Thursday, the 16th. Rebecca, can we please call the roll?
Good afternoon. Canal?
Here.
Pirtle-Guinea?
Here.
Ryan? Koyama Lane?
Here.
Murillo?
Here.
Novick?
Locked and loaded. Here.
Clark?
Here.
Green?
Here.
Zimmerman? Avalos?
Present.
Smith?
Here.
Dunphy?
Here. And can we please read the rules of decorum?
Welcome to the Portland City Council. To testify before council in person or virtually, you must sign up in advance on the council agenda at www.portland.gov/council/agenda. Information on engaging with council can be found on the council clerk's webpage. Individuals may testify for 3 minutes unless the presiding officer states otherwise. Your microphone will be muted when your time is over. The presiding officer preserves order. Disruptive conduct, such as shouting, refusing to conclude your testimony when your time is up, or interrupting others' testimony or council deliberations will not be allowed. If you cause a disruption, a warning will be given. Further disruption will result in ejection from the meeting. Anyone who fails to leave once ejected is subject to arrest for trespass. Additionally, council may take a short recess and reconvene virtually. Your testimony should address the matter being considered. When testifying, state your name for the record. Your address is not necessary. If you are a lobbyist, identify the organization you represent. Virtual testifiers should unmute themselves when the council clerk calls your name. Thank you.
Colleagues, we have 2 time-certain items, settlements that we posted as time-certain. So we are going to hear those first. We will then move to finish item 7 from last night, the codification of the PCCEP. We will then move on to items 10 and 11 from there. Can we please call item number 8?
Item 8, pay settlement of the estate of Ashley McGill wrongful death lawsuit involving the Portland Bureau of Transportation for $80,000. This is document number 2026-127.
Colleagues, this is an emergency ordinance. We have staff presentation here from, I believe, Senior Claims Analyst Joseph Jesse and Deputy City Attorney Caroline Turco. Take it away.
Good afternoon, Caroline Turco with the City Attorney's Office Litigation Section. This case involves a fatal traffic crash that occurred on August 27th, 2022 at the intersection of Southeast Stark and Southeast 133rd Street. The decedent's name is Ashley McGill. Her mother brought the lawsuit on her behalf, and the lawsuit sought $15 million. At the intersection where the crash occurred, there is a pedestrian refuge island. It was designed with signage and flashing beacons to increase visibility for individuals crossing the street. At the time of the crash, the signage and the beacon had been knocked down for over a year and a half and had gone unrepaired. The crash primarily resulted from the activity of speed racers, in particular one driver's failure to see the pedestrian island. He swerved at the last minute, crashed into the car next to him, lost control of his vehicle, and then proceeded across the intersection and hit Ashley McGill at a high rate of speed. The actions of the speed racers were the primary cause of the accident. However, on a verdict form, there can be multiple causes of an event. Should the case have proceeded to a jury trial, the city's failure to repair the pedestrian island could have been found to have been one of the causes of Ms. McGill's death. Given the risk of an adverse jury verdict, the parties attended mediation in December and reached a mutually agreeable settlement of $80,000. The City Attorney's Office and Risk Management recommend approval of the settlement. I'm happy to answer any questions. Otherwise, this concludes my remarks.
Colleagues, to start with technical or clarifying questions, we also have some folks signed up. Well, we may have some, no, I'm wrong about that, but we don't have anybody signed up for testimony. Okay, great. Then we're just going to move into technical clarifying questions and council discussion. So feel free to jump into the queue. Councilor Zimmerman.
Thanks. You mentioned that this was due to a driver who was speed racing, or whatever the right term would be. How fast was he going when this occurred?
Officer David Enns with PPB investigated the crash and determined that he was going 84 miles an hour.
Okay. I think Powell is 30 or so. And then did the estate seek damages from the person who killed her?
Yes, the estate sued multiple parties, the speed racers and the owners of the vehicles under a negligent entrustment theory. There was no insurance coverage. The speed racers were incarcerated. So that presented different risks at trial if the city were to be held responsible for those damages.
Okay. I think I'm going to go ahead and stop my questions there.
Thank you, Councilor Zimmerman. Councilor Pertolini.
Thank you, Council President. Sometimes these settlements raise issues we might not otherwise hear, and clearly the predominant cause here was the drivers. But I know that sometimes when we have these conversations, we look also at where there is future liability. And I'm wondering if we have any information about safety signage and how quickly signage like that is normally replaced within the city, whether this was an outlier or whether we often have delays this long to understand what the future potential risk is with this settlement.
I believe this case does present an outlier. I will say my focus was on this intersection in particular because it involved a flashing beacon. It's known as a RRFB, rectangular rapid flashing beacon. Those are relatively sparse throughout the city and an outlier unto themselves. I don't have specific information on what other hazards exist throughout the city or the schedule for repair.
Council President, is that something we could get information on at some point?
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you, Councilor Pertolini. Councilor Smith.
Thank you. I was just looking at the resolution, and it looks like it gives the city administrator permission to settle this. Is that normal? I thought it went through the city attorney's office.
Wow, so procedural questions. I believe the city attorney's office has a threshold under which there is authority to settle, and I would believe that this case goes above that threshold. I could be wrong.
It just stuck out to me because I'm looking, it says the city administrator is authorized to settle the lawsuit in the amount of $80,000. Generally, is there a money threshold? Because I thought that all of this goes through the city attorney's office.
Yeah, I believe.
I think I see our city attorney, Robert Taylor, coming up.
Sure, I can give it a try so my boss doesn't have to step in on my behalf.
Go for it.
I believe city code gives the city attorney up to $50,000 authority. So I would assume that because this amount is over that, that's why that language is used.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Smith. Councilor Canal.
Thank you, Council President. First, my condolences to the family and friends of Ashley McGill. Thank you to both Caroline and Jesse and everyone who worked on this issue for the presentation, for the work that you've done prior to it. I appreciate the continued inclusion of the claims data for PBOT over the last 1 year and 5 years. And I'm looking forward to helping build this out with risk management and sort of iterating this piece of information further so the public can better understand. To this specific ordinance, I think there's a conversation here that I wanted to touch on but not get into just for time, which is that street racing remains a scourge in our communities. and is something that we need to deal with. We have a lot of questions that come up about how best to deal with it, and I'm looking forward to hearing back on something that this council did last year to help create space for that conversation. During the budget, we adopted a budget note, Canal 10, which instructed the Portland Police Bureau to prioritize overtime spending on a host of different matters of citywide concern that the public had been bringing up and that the Police Bureau also acknowledged as high priorities. One of those was street racing. We've only had one update on that so far, and I'm looking forward to getting that ideally with the help of Councilor Novick to schedule it in the CAPS committee, but we'll figure that out later. But I wanted to mention that here because I hope that we're not settling lawsuits like this in the future, because we're doing everything we can 100% of the time to limit, reduce, and eventually eliminate street racing and the violence it causes on our streets. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilor Canal. Colleagues, seeing no one else in the queue for discussion, this is an emergency ordinance. Rebecca, can we please call the roll?
Canal.
Aye.
Pirtle-Guinea.
Aye.
Ryan.
Aye.
Koyama-Lane.
Aye.
Murillo. Absent. Novick.
Aye.
Clark.
Aye.
Green.
Aye.
Zimmerman.
Aye.
Avalos.
Aye.
Smith.
Aye.
Dunphy.
Aye.
The ordinance passes with 11 aye and 1 absent.
Okay. We're going to take a deep breath for about 35 more seconds because our next item is a time certain at 2:15, and it is currently 2:14, 2:13 and some change. So we're going to wait just a moment. Congratulations to the council for getting through that ahead of schedule. Always nice. Steve, you got a joke? Okay.
Actually, Mr. President, I was saying this to Councilor Avalos just earlier. My jokes always play off something that's happening, so if nothing's happening, it's hard for me to play off anything.
Fair, right. Your brand of comedy is responsive.
There has to be some sort of like sound of silence reference you can make during this moment, Councilor Novick.
This is an example of my colleagues stepping up to make jokes with me, and I encourage all of you to do more of that.
All right, there we go. Can we please read item number 9?
Item 9, pay settlement of Grote Brothers Incorporated property damage claim involving Portland Parks and Recreation for $89,106, document number 2026-128.
Colleagues, this is an emergency ordinance. With us is Senior Claims Analyst Rose Radish. Welcome. Take it away.
Thank you. My name is Rosalia Radich with the city's risk management. This ordinance settles a property damage claim resulting from a motor vehicle collision between a Portland Parks and Recreation vehicle and a Grote Brothers Incorporated semi-truck. Okay, thanks. The collision was at the intersection of North Lombard Street and North Harborgate Street on September 3rd, 2025. An employee of Grote Brothers was driving a semi-truck hauling a trailer of scrap metal north on North Lombard. A Parks employee driving a city vehicle was going west on North Harborgate and failed to yield at a stop sign before entering the intersection. The city vehicle struck the passenger side of the truck cab and the trailer overturned, spilling scrap metal. Grote Brothers Incorporated filed a claim with the city for their property damage, and this resolution resolves that property damage, including the value of the truck and trailer, the cost to clean up the collision, including towing costs, cleaning up the spilled scrap, fuel cleanup and remediation, And Risk Management and Portland Parks recommend the settlement for the total sum of $89,106.15. And that concludes my remarks, but happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Colleagues, are there any technical or clarifying questions for this? Okay. Seeing none. Rebecca, do we have anyone signed up for testimony?
No one has signed up.
Okay. Colleagues, any further council discussion about this settlement? Councillor Canal.
Thank you, Council President. I just wanted to ask a clarifying question and see if there was any teasing apart that could be done about one thing that we saw in the attachment. So if you look at the attachment over the last 5 years, there have been $5 million paid out to 371 claims for parks. And just as a quick side note, I don't think it makes sense to compare bureaus to each other in terms of, most or fewest or whatever, but to look at them in the context of their own trends. There are some exceptions to that. There's sometimes where it makes sense to compare, but I'm not doing that right now, I guess is what I'm trying to say. But within the last year, $3.5 million has been paid out, including this to parks. And I know there was one very large $1 million settlement, but even if you take that out, that's about half of the last 5 years happening in the last year. And I wanted to ask if we could get more information about the trend lines and sort of break this down a little bit and see if there's a pattern, because I don't know if that's just a few outliers, large scale settlements. There was the one with the hammocks attached to the poles. That was a very large one. That might skew the statistic a little bit, or if it's just a series of additional claims. And I wanted to understand that. I don't know, Rose, if you have this information on hand, but wanted to flag that.
Thank you. I don't have the breakdown right now. I can definitely get that to you. I do know that within the last year, there were the 2 hammock claims, as you mentioned, and there also was a drowning. And so those were 3 very significant claims that I think largely contribute to why the last year is such a large bulk of the 5-year numbers. But I can certainly get a further breakdown for you. Would you like... I guess how much detail would you like in the breakdown, just sort of with those 3 claims removed, and see if it kind of evens out more, and if you have further questions, or would you like a further breakdown?
I think a further breakdown, because there may be other outliers that existed in the 5-year run before we all took office.
Okay.
Most of us. And so just wanted to, I think it's a small sample size, so it's hard to know whether or not it's skewed or not. I think when we are having these conversations, because now we're also not privy to as many of the settlements, because in the old form of government, anything over 5,000 would go to council, and now it's anything over 50,000. So there are a lot of smaller ones that maybe are not in the conversation. So I wanted to just flag that. The other piece is I really appreciate the information that Parks gave ahead of time about sort of their response to this internally, and just wanted to give them praise for that, because it gives me some confidence that there will be fewer and ideally none of these types of situations in the future. Thank you, Council President.
Thank you, Councillor Canal. Colleagues, any further discussion of this item? Seeing no one in the queue, Rebecca, can we please call the roll?
Canal.
Aye.
Pirtle-Guinea.
Aye.
Ryan.
Aye.
Koyama Lane.
Aye.
Murillo.
Aye.
Novick.
Aye.
Clark.
Aye.
Green.
Aye.
Zimmerman.
Aye.
Avalos.
Aye.
Smith.
Aye.
Dunphy.
Aye.
The ordinance passes with 12 aye votes.
Thank you very much. Can we please now move to, I guess, a new item number 10, reopening the final hearing on, or the hearing on the codification of PCCEP.
Add code to establish the Portland Committee on Community Engaged Policing. Add code chapter 3.23, document number 2026-126.
Thank you. Colleagues, last night we made it through we didn't make it through technical or clarifying questions. We made it through public testimony. Now is the time for technical clarifying or council discussion. Additionally, Councilor Canal, as one of the chief sponsors of this, did not give opening remarks. He asked to delay to that today, so I'm going to turn the start over to him, to Councilor Canal. So, Councilor Canal, take it away.
Thank you, Council President. Let me first start by thanking the community in the spirit of PCCEP, where the community comes first. I also want to thank the members and past members, the list of names read yesterday, who have contributed from the membership and from just regular attendance, and of course the partners of PCCEP. These partners include the Mayor's Office, Portland Police Bureau, City Attorney's Office, the staff at the Public Safety Service Area who supported, the facilitators, the Albina Ministerial Alliance Coalition for Justice and Police Reform, the Mental Health Alliance, the Portland Police Association, all of whom are generous with their time and expertise and often collaboration. There are also numerous other volunteers around the city, the Citizen Review Committee, the Focus Intervention Team, Community Oversight Group, and previously the Police Bureau-wide Advisory Committee and Police Accountability Commission, who've contributed to or partnered with PCCEP. Finally, I want to thank some specific people who've contributed to PCCEP over the years but are often unsung. Afrida, who we heard from yesterday, and Nikita, also Teresa Alonso Leon, as facilitators. City attorneys Sarah Ames and Heidi Brown, former Mayor Wheeler and his staff, primarily Stephanie Howard, current Mayor Wilson and his staff, primarily Christopher Taft, and former interim project manager Judith Mowry and the PSSA, which includes Mike Myers, Elizabeth Perez, Emily Mann, Liz Taylor, and of course, project manager Victoria Grabinski. I flag all of that to say up front, to note how many people are involved in the work of this entity and how important it is that it be continued on. I had the privilege of working with the Portland Committee on Community Engaged Policing for just shy of 3 years in my last job, including as the interim staff member for about 2 months until permanent staff came on board. In that time, I've learned a lot about PCCEP, and just about every question that begins, is PCCEP more A or more B, is best answered to with both. Or yes. It's a place to hear from the police and the mayor's office, and a place for the people to be heard. It's a place that shares information with the public and a group that makes recommendations. It's a place where members are advising the city directly, and a place where members are conduits for the broader community. PCCEP is unique in our system, and it also has additional responses that are unique in the sense that the mayor must respond to PCCEP recommendations, or the chief, depending on where the recommendation goes, within 60 days. PCCEP exists as a creature of the settlement agreement with the federal government, but it is so much broader than that. It is one of a few places where Portlanders from various backgrounds and with various viewpoints come together to discuss issues of intense feelings that relate to their core values, histories, and in some cases their traumas. While it is true that people have come to PCCEP often to discuss a trauma faced at the hands of police, people have also come to PCCEP to discuss a trauma that police helped them with. Different elected officials and leadership, including Chief Day and his representatives, come not only to talk, but to listen. These impacts transcend the context of the settlement agreement and could continue, in fact, must continue, after the settlement agreement no longer deals with PCCEP or after it ends in time. And that's why PCCEP codification has been in the conversation for years, going back before my time started at the city, but including recommendations in 2022 and 2024 to codify. The urgency, and this is a rare time while I will be giving my full voice to the emergency clause, is that the judge's order could take effect to take out the paragraphs from the settlement agreement related to PCCEP as early as April 17th, and that is tomorrow. But even setting aside this particular urgency, this is a really good thing to do. City Code has some of our most important and some of our most unique appointed boards and commissions, including everything ranging from the Election Commission to the Golf Advisory Committee and the Sustainability and Climate Commission. PCCEP is both important and unique, and it is thus fitting that it be made a permanent part of our work as a city by adding it to City Code. I want to conclude by saying I really appreciate everyone who is involved. You may have seen when Christopher Taft presented the slides about when different parts of the city system, the volunteers, the mayor's office, my office, and Councilor Novik's office as well, were involved in bringing this forward, and starting with that first conversation with PCCEP and then with the mayor to help craft this together. I really appreciate the collaboration. I've wanted to get that done for a long time, and combining these two threads has been really helpful. So thank you so much. I urge you all to help pass this today as an emergency.
Thank you, Councilor Canal. Councilor Avalos.
Okay, thank you. Let's start by acknowledging the importance of the Portland Committee on Community Engaged Policing and the role that it has played in advancing community-centered police accountability. I want to thank all of the folks that came out last night. And you know something is important if the legendary Dr. Leroy Haynes stays until almost 9 p.m. So thank you to the folks that stuck it out to share their voice, because this is a critical moment to codify PCCEP. As someone who served on the CRC, I've seen firsthand how critical it is to have community voices meaningfully integrated into these oversight systems, and I see codifying PCCEP into city code as an important step towards formalizing that work and ensuring that it's stable and consistent and not dependent on changing administrations or priorities. This ordinance helps establish a clear structure and code that creates transparency and accountability and community engagement. So thank you so much. I know Councilor Canal, you've been working really hard on ensuring that there's transparency and engagement in these processes. But one thing I want to note, over the years, the city has had multiple police accountability bodies, and at times their roles and authorities have overlapped. And when that happens, oversight can become fragmented or unclear, which ultimately weakens the system that we're trying to build. So it's important that as we're codifying PCCEP, that we also have clarity on how it fits within the broader accountability framework. And so that's where some of my questions are coming from. So my first question is, how does codifying PCCEP impact or interact with the role of the new Community Board for Police Accountability? I'm wondering if someone could speak to the relationship you plan to see it have with the new CBPA, and how we're ensuring clear lines of responsibility to avoid duplication or fragmentation. And I'll just add one other note to say, because I heard Yume, the current CRC chair yesterday, share, and it's true, that PCCEP has always been kind of our community engagement arm, where the CRC has to be much more structured because they are doing discipline. And so, but I know that the new CBPA has capacity and interest to do a little bit more of that engagement work, to be more broad. And so I just want to understand how you're seeing both of these two bodies interacting with each other as it relates to community engagement on policing issues.
Thank you, Councilor Avalos, Council President, Council Vice President, and Councilors generally. Heidi Brown with City Attorney's Office. So I'll defer to Dory to explain somewhat, but the PCCEP's role is to gather community input, create that trust to try to help create trust between community and police, and to present that community feedback to the police bureau and to the mayor, and to have that loop available and an ability to communicate with each other. And the CBPA, oh, thank you, this is great. The CBPA's role, the Community Board for Police Accountability, their role is distinct in that they focus on accountability. They have the authority by charter that cannot go to another group because it is with that board to oversee allegations of misconduct and to give appropriate discipline where warranted. Additionally, as I'm sure you know, but for other folks, they also have the authority to provide policy recommendations to the police bureau. So there's somewhat of an overlap because PCCEP also can give recommendations on any number of things, and they're not limited in that sense. However, the way that the response happens to PCCEP and to the community board for police accountability is different. There's different processes established by code.
Yeah, Dory Grubinski, PCCEP Program Manager for the record. Yeah, I think, as we all know, the CBPA is brand new. It is just getting set up, and none of this is, that relationship is not clearly defined yet. I guess, as Heidi was kind of speaking to, I sort of think of like the CBPA is looking at individual trees. So, individual cases of misconduct and doing investigations and things like that. And I think PCCEP is positioned to sort of look at the forest. So if patterns are emerging, if there are things that our body should be responding to based on the work of the CBPA, I think that is something that historically this body has been interested in, our current membership is interested in. And so I look forward to seeing that relationship, being defined as we move forward with both of these entities. And that's how I think about it.
Thank you. And I think the reason I bring it up is just because over the years, there have been all of these different kinds of boards. I know in 2020, there was all this conflict around the TAC and the CAG and the CRC and the PCCEP and all the other acronyms of different groups that, supposedly are there to advise the council, the mayor, the police bureau. But then what happens is when it's not clear what each of their roles are, then what we were seeing was, well, this board feels this way about a policy, but this board doesn't. So then for us as leaders, we're like, well, who is the community board that we're supposed to then act with a policy lens on, right? So I hope, and I think this is a broader conversation as CBPA gets put on, that we have a deeper discussion about the entire universe of these community groups, because there's plenty, it's not just these couple. And I think, again, about streamlining so that as we are trying to implement this level of community accountability, that we're also being held accountable to who we're answering to, and that can be confusing. So that's why I raised those questions. So let's keep talking about that, but I wanted to get your first take on how because we're codifying PCCEP, how you were seeing it nestling into the broader system. Did you have something to add?
Thank you, Councilor. Yes, one more thing I just want to make really clear so that there's not a misunderstanding by any of our unions, is that the PCCEP doesn't have the authority to discipline, so that when we're talking about accountability, as Dory was just saying, they might be looking for trends and seeing things, and then they would have the ability to raise those issues to the mayor, to the chief of police as a recommendation, but they don't have any authority to enforce things. And they've done that sort of thing in the past. So it doesn't actually change what their role is, nor does it change what the oversight board's role is.
Yes, thank you for that clarification. I know I'm using the term accountability very broadly, but it does have a unique definition as it relates to this, so appreciate the clarity. Another thing is that I see that the code requires that the mayor and the chief of police respond to PCCEP recommendations within 60 days, which great, and that's also something we baked into the CBPA. But I was curious if council will also be receiving those recommendations and responses, or where's council's role in reacting to their policy recommendations?
Just so from a legal perspective, I think the plan of the code was to incorporate the existing structure for PCCEP. So from there, PCCEP makes recommendations to the mayor and the chief of police. Obviously, the council has the ability to request a report on any number of, on a wide variety of topics, and including on this topic. So in that way, I think council could request a report and get information that way.
Okay. Yeah, I understand the channels, I guess I'm just wanting to make sure that council is able to be responsive, because a lot of what the PCCEP is going to do is provide policy direction, and that's where, council should be stepping in to legislate. Lastly, the code states that PCCEP is not subject to Oregon public meeting law, but will follow it to the extent it determines appropriate. Can you explain the rationale? And I feel like, is that a change, or is that how PCCEP has been working? And has that been different than CRC, and why?
Because CRC, yes, it is different than CRC. PCCEP has been working that way because they are a body that gets advice to the mayor or make recommendations to the mayor, rather. And so they are only giving recommendations to one person, and therefore they are not considered a body advising a governing body, and that a body more than a single individual. Different CRC had that ability to appeal things to council, and so they were.
Maybe CRC was a bad example. I'm also thinking of all the other boards. Do all the other boards not work on OPML as well?
Correct. Yeah. All the other boards we talked about, except the Community Board for Police Accountability, they are a governing body in and of their own. They're not even advising a governing body. They're in their own existence a governing body and therefore have to follow public meetings laws. So my understanding
You're
is
saying they do?
they do. They're required to.
Like
Because
the TAC and the...
No, I'm sorry.
That's what I'm
that was the Community Board for Police Accountability.
Oh, okay, yeah,
The TAC,
yes, but all the other police, the FITCOG and all those other
FITCOG.
things are all not OPML.
correct.
And it is legally because their advice is given to one elected as opposed to the whole body.
Right, or for TAC, it's to the chief of police, but it's not somebody, it's not more than one final decision maker.
Okay. I'll keep noodling on that, but thank you. And I do know that they do work hard to adhere as much to OPML, and I get the legal thing, but just because we were baking it in, I just wanted to raise that and make sure I understood what our practice was. Thank you for your time. That's all.
Thank you, Counselor.
Thank you, Councilor Avalos. Councilor Zimmerman.
Thanks. Really appreciated yesterday's members who came and talked to us. So thanks for giving us 2 days now. And in reviewing the documents, even before we walked into yesterday's meeting, I was considering the change in currently the youth positions are 16 to 23 years old. And in what's being proposed, it moves it to 15 to 25. So it got me thinking, I think back about what do we want from a youth role and how do we protect that? Because I think it's an important role. I was a person who was appointed to a school board as a student rep. I was a person who was appointed to a special budget district committee at some point in my youth, in those about years, for one of the counties in Oregon. I think they're important roles. And I also, given what PCCEP advises on, I think about the age of 15 or 16. Does it matter? And I actually think it does. And I think about the difference between a 15-year-old and a 16-year-old. And for a lot of us, while we are definitely still minors at 16, it's also the beginning of adulthood, right? We oftentimes will have our first job at 16. It's when we're allowed to drive on our own without our parents, is at 16, which means it is also the time in our life when we most likely are going to interact with police without our parents nearby. Mm-hmm. And I think about that in this role. Because I think that having dedicated youth members on the PCCEP committee is something we should be proud of. And so I appreciate the attention here, but I do think that, and then the other piece here is just, given what we heard in terms of the intensity of the work, working generally starts at 16, and I want to be cognizant of that. And given the topics that come up, I think there is something about that I find as preserving 16 has become important to me. And then going to the other side, going up to 25. 25 for a youth position, by all means, a young person. I get that. But, I have members of my own staff who are not yet 25, right? Working in City Hall, advising me on lots of senior policy. I myself was leading a platoon full of soldiers in Iraq at 25 years old. Certainly probably didn't qualify for a youth seat. And so I'm just thinking about those, because when we dedicate space to a youth seat, we take on the challenges of having a youth member, which means school can get in the way, which means homework can get in the way, which means being 17 and not really keeping a calendar on your iPhone the way the adults does is part of the role and what we actually are inviting. And I think that those challenges come with it. And I say that because I think if we go up to 25, I think over time, unless we were very careful, I think over time we would probably cut out really the youngest of youth who are eligible, because it would be easier to have a 25-year-old who is closer to and living as and working as and probably has rent issues as an adult than it would be to have a 16 or a 17-year-old on. I think those challenges that come with a youth member are designed, and we should protect it. And so I have had some conversations with the mayor's team. I've had some conversations with the staff, and I appreciate you sharing the background on this and opening the field a little bit more. But I offer it as, I think I'm going to propose to move Zimmerman 1, colleagues, which moves this age back to 16 to 23, which is what it currently is, because I would like to preserve those years of middle high school, driving on your own through what I'll say are the grand majority standard deviation of your college years. And I think that those are an important voice to make sure we preserve on PCCEP. So I'll move Zimmerman 1, and I would appreciate a second on that and your consideration.
Second.
Counselor Zimmerman moves Zimmerman 1. I don't, rock, paper, scissors between the two of you. Who's that? Smith? Counselor Smith seconds. Colleagues, discussion on Amendment Zimmerman 1. Counselor Green.
Thank you. Thank you, Counselor Zimmerman, for sort of articulating your motivation for this. I'm speaking in opposition to the motion largely because, you know, a lot of folks do actually start working before the age of 16. Young people do a lot of work that's invisible and shoulder a lot of burdens in their homes and in their families. I think that we place a lot of burden on young people, and we deserve to give them the opportunity to engage in civic life at an earlier age. And so I think that the expansiveness came out of a community-driven process, if I'm not mistaken. And so I'm hesitant to amend that back without sort of a broader discussion. And I'll just kind of leave it there for now.
Thank you, Counselor Green. Counselor Novick.
I'm curious as to, well, one thing, I'd love to hear Councilor Canal as my co-sponsor weigh in this amendment. I'm wondering if part of was part of the motivation for the change the fact that ages 15 to 25 are the ages of frankly, the greatest amount of criminal activity, but then by inference, probably also the greatest amount of interaction between people and police?
Generally speaking, yes. Our understanding of the intention of having these reserved youth seats is that people in this demographic have different kinds of interactions with police, different nature of those interactions. So generally speaking, that is part of the rationale, yes. Yeah.
I also was about to say that my understanding is that research shows that brain development ends at age 25, but then I Googled that and discovered all sorts of neurologists saying that's a myth. So I'm kind of torn on this, and I'm curious to see what my fellow councilors have to say.
Thank you, Counselor Novick. I had a question about this. I put myself in the queue. Every clause and sentence of the settlement agreement has been carefully negotiated and talked to with lawyers. I assume that the codification of this as part of our settlement agreement also was carefully negotiated. Does us changing anything in this, even this, complicate the process? Does it screw up things with US DOJ? Does it, are there any unintended repercussions that may come by us amending language right now? I would hope not, but.
Hi, Council President Heidi Brown again. Nothing in the provisions that applied to the DOJ settlement agreement provisions that apply to this portion of the PCCEP have been terminated. The city has successfully been in substantial compliance and for a sufficient amount of time that this is no longer part of the settlement agreement. So there's no prohibition on adopting this. And even otherwise, there wasn't language in the DOJ settlement agreement that said exactly what the youth age needed to be anyhow. So wherever you decide to land on that, that's a policy decision for all of you. Legally, there's no prohibition one way or another.
Great, thank you. Just wanted to make sure we asked that. Councilor Canal.
Thank you. I really appreciate this conversation, and I'm a little conflicted in a couple ways on this because I think some of the conversation around what it takes and what the unique challenges of youth members are that Councilor Zimmerman brought up are 100% accurate and in line with my experience. I have been one of the people who has called to try and remind, youth members, you are on this thing, and your attendance matters and all of that. I won't, in my experience in multiple advisory groups, I wouldn't say that that is limited to youth. As it has been pointed out, it manifests differently. And so I appreciate this being brought up, but I don't think it is unique by any means to even the full range of at most 15 to 25 or whatever sub set within that comes up. The other point that I wanted to raise here is when you look at the conversation, there are very, very few changes that have been done to PCCEP in this codification process. All of them are things that have been discussed for a long period of time. And all of them were negotiated, not in the context of messing up the settlement agreement. As Heidi pointed out, and Dory, that's not a conversation that's super relevant for, given the context of the paragraphs being terminated. But in the broader general Portland political context and the specific PCCEP context, these conversations have been in progress for a while. And this particular age range conversation has not landed at this particular point at this range that's being proposed. I do think that PCCEP members, as I recall originally, that the age range that was suggested in this ordinance did come from PCCEP members in one of the codification proposals. I'm going to verify that. Actually, I'm not sure. I'm really sorry to put you on the spot, Dory and Heidi, but can you recall if that's a particular piece of the recommendation either time in terms of the age range?
Christopher Taft from Mayor Wilson's office. Councilor, are you referring to the meeting when this maybe first was introduced? Is that what you're asking? Just to clarify.
No, just trying to, if you could speak to the rationale for why it's this age range is, I guess, the underlying question, Christopher.
Understood. I'm going to defer to Dory, but just when we were meeting, it was brought up that youth members is difficult to retain and to fill often, and expanding the funnel would perhaps make this easier to maintain and have youth members stick around. But I don't know if, Dory, you want to add anything to that?
I don't know if I have much to add. My recollection is that in the planning meetings where PCCEP members were invited to participate and give feedback on the draft code language, that this was originally a discussion brought up by the members who attended that meeting. And again, speaking to sort of the concept of what having these reserved youth seats is, which as we've discussed, is to reflect that different experience with police and how that might not map very neatly onto it's just everyone, one 23-year-old's experience might be different from another's. And then also, some of those logistical realities for both staff and members themselves and some of the challenges in keeping these seats filled.
Thank you. I would add to that. So this question helped me just to recall, because as has been pointed out, this has been a multi-month process of conversations leading up to this ordinance in anticipation that it might be that these paragraphs might be terminated at some point, and also the conversations with PCCEP members. I'll also mention one other thing. In the broader conversations, the forest level conversations, there are major generational differences in different communities in Portland, not just racial and ethnic communities, but also people living with mental health issues or mental illness. And having youth seats allows for us to not simply err on the side of whatever age range is already represented in city advisory groups over the course of many years. That has proven to generally be more likely to be retired folks just because they have more time. Having these dedicated youth seats allows, in part, for those other generational perspectives to be acknowledged as well. So just wanted to contextualize that. To the specific proposal, I think what I noted from the testimony that called for a change yesterday was that they felt that this one member felt that the change was being imposed without a full conversation. And I think that we shouldn't double down on that. In my personal opinion, there's a lot more work that could be done on PCCEP structure, and I look forward to having those conversations with the mayor after this underlying ordinance passes. And I'd love to include this in that rather than amending it now. Thank you.
Thank you,
Council
Council.
President?
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, can I clarify? I misspoke. I think I said earlier that the settlement agreement didn't have the specific age, and it does. I just want to, and it has 16 to 23.
Thank you.
It still doesn't apply, but thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Pertolini.
Thank you, Council President. You know, as I was, when I first read the proposal before us, I noticed that this was one of the only changes from the current language that PCCEP operates under, and I was curious about that change to 15 to 25, and I started thinking then and then thought more last night about this age range as a parent and trying to think about and hold both at the low end when we're operating in most, because there are always kids who are exceptionally ready or who take a little longer to get there on any topic. But at what age are most kids ready to hold the weight of what PCCEP hears? And on the other end, when does that relationship with policing and that space of you done did something stupid because you're a teenager wear off for most kids? And I actually appreciate this amendment because as I try to hold that thinking, especially on the top end, when does that relationship change? It feels like the way that a 17 or 18 or 19-year-old interacts with our police is often different than what that looks like at 24 or 25. And I do think it's important to make sure that we hear voices from those late teens and early 20s who are able to hold the weight of what PCCEP hears, but also have that different relationship where, frankly, they're testing things out and pushing limits and need to be able to share with those of us who are a little past that point in life what they need from our policing structure to be able to learn their lessons in a safe way and move on into adulthood responsibly. So I will be supporting this amendment today. I think had it been changed to something other than the original, I would hold the weight of the conversation that went into this new age differently and might ask for us to hold before we did something, but returning to the age that it has been is something I'm very comfortable with.
Thank you, Councilor Pertolini. Just saw a bunch of hands disappear from the queue. Councilor Canal.
Thank you for that. And I want to say, when I first started hearing Councilor Pertolini's comment, I understand the point on the top end of the range. But I did want to say something on the lower end of the range. And this is something I don't really talk about a whole lot, but I will say, as the only man of color on this council, I can tell you that it is not at 16 when your relationship or perceived relationship with adult structures changes. And that includes the police. It's not limited to the police, because 15-year-olds can get permits. 15-year-olds are going to be out and about. 15-year-olds might be in schools that have a police presence or a crime presence that might involve a police response. And there were two young men of color who served on PCCEP a few years ago. They both had the same first name, so I'm not going to say which one it was, but I remember talking to one of them about his experience going back to middle school as part of this, and as someone who has been deeply involved in trying to get young people to apply for this and reaching out to every school, every college, everybody, having the expanded range is helpful for that. But I also don't want to minimize that there is something that changes, and it changes at a different age for different people. And for many of the same communities, I imagine, and I've heard from people in other advisory groups, that this is the case for the other target population for PCCEP as well, which is folks experiencing mental health crises, that you might become an adult earlier and you might have different experiences earlier. So the low end of the range, I want to really talk about that as a reason for opposition here, because in my experience, that wasn't magically at 16. I don't think there's ever a clear line, and I want to be upfront about that. There's nothing inherently better about 18 than 17 and 364 days in terms of your legal responsibility changing, but your capacity doesn't change much mentally. And we've talked about that in the context of voting and other kinds of things. But in the context of when your life changes in terms of how you're treated as an adult by governmental systems, I think that doesn't happen at the same age for every population. And I feel obligated, given my role on this council, to bring that up. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Canal. Councilor Zimmerman.
Thank you. What's the longest a PCCEP meeting goes for?
The scheduled time would be 2.5 hours.
Okay. I asked that because there are restrictions, and it kicks in at 3 hours for a 15-year-old who works, which was part of my motivation that I talked about. So if PCCEP's anything like this city council, it busts through its timelines on a fairly regular basis. And I don't know that to be the case, but I appreciate kind of knowing we're still in compliance if we have 15, and I appreciate that. I think that we are the adults in the room. I think that when you are the adults in the room, you can make no solution that works for everyone in every single situation, but the state of Oregon, the United States, has said that 16 is kind of when things kind of start to change in a lot of ways, knowing that any sort of standard deviation, or there's going to be eaches out there. I really, really value, colleagues, that if you think, why do we have a youth seat dedicated to any system, or why do we have a senior seat dedicated to any system, or why do we have name the group? And it's because that system generally doesn't automatically put that demographic into the seat. And so we've articulated that youth is important. And I guess I would like to underline a part here, which is the further we extend the youth number into the 20s, I think that the system is less likely to appoint a member who is a youth to that seat. And that is a motivator for me. So I share that. Well, you may disagree with me, but I think that the system will generally pick a 25-year-old to serve over a 17-year-old. And I bet they can do a good job, but I want to make sure that that 17-year-old voice is always able to be heard, because I think it's important to a lot of the points that you all have made, whether you're agreeing with this or not. And good, bad, or indifferent, but I'll just, from what I understand, that perhaps this decision was made by the PCCEP committee while the youth members were not present, and that the youth members also are in favor of a 16 to 23. When you ask youth members to be a part of a thing, they're gonna make you mad sometimes. But in this case, I both agreed with it, and then it happened to get testified to, but it was already a thing on my paper that I circled of, I have some concern about this. So if you're on the fence, then you should vote for no change, which means you vote for this amendment. If you feel strongly, I get it. But I think no change, making it 16 to 23 is a yes vote for this amendment, and we can move forward and codify.
Thank you, Councilor Zimmerman. Colleagues, I'll just note that it is currently 3 o'clock, and we still have 2 additional items to hear today. Councilor Ryan.
Yeah, thank you, Council President. Well, Councilor Zimmerman just brought up such a fascinating amendment, so here we are. I think that one thing that you said at the beginning that really got me awake was that youth often have the most interaction with police. I'll speak for myself. I had a really fun childhood in youth. And so my most active time with police was definitely started around 15 to early 20s. And so I was thinking 15 was great, but you had me at lowering it to 23 because of other remarks that you made. But what's really awkward right now is I see Jorge out there, and you testified last night, and you are a youth member of the commission. And I would like to hear, I know you testified last night, but you're now here in person listening to us have this conversation. And so I would like to hear your perspective on what we're saying. Would that be safe? Council President, we may have him come up. Hey, Jorge, I know I helped you get, you applied for another commission. How many commissions are you on?
I'm on 3 bodies.
Wow.
The Portlanders Policy Commission, the Cully-TIF CLC, and the Portland Committee on Community Engaged Policing. And for the record, Jorge Sanchez-Bautista, Community Organizer and Interim Co-Chair for PCCEP.
Yeah, I knew the new Portlanders. So anyway, thank you for your service. So you've been listening to all of us. We're not you, and we weren't in the conversation, and we are not a youth that's been serving on this commission. Tell us what you really think.
I think, and I did draft something afterwards, and I'm happy to read it. But you know, I wanted to say that PCCEP members were brought into the conversation, as I stated in my testimony yesterday evening, in formation of this language, and agreed with almost everything that past members had drafted with former Mayor Ted Wheeler. I will note, though, that yes, I was not part of those conversations, and nor was the other youth member. And we had both talked about it before yesterday evening about like, hey, we both weren't part of this. What did you think? We both agreed to the suggestion that I had offered to keeping it to 15, because to points that some of you counselors have made, 15 may be young, yes, but there is a lot of facts that you have presented that's the reason why we thought, okay, let's keep it to 15. The big concern that we had was the 25 range. That seemed a little bit too high for us, and so we had suggested perhaps lowering it to 23 to actually focus on making it very youth-centered. One thing that we are thinking about when we did think about that 15 to 22 range is because it's very centered to high school, but also college age and transitioning out of that. The other thing I will note too is we do have now an onboarded community engagement person who we have had our conversation, and based on what their conversations have been, is focusing a lot more on schools. Their background is in youth violence prevention, and so I'm happy that if this age range is lowered down to 15 to 22, it holds staff accountable to ensure that they actually bring someone that's in that age perspective, but also we have our community engagement person that's doing the work in our schools and in the community and getting that, out there that PCCEP exists, PCCEP does this, et cetera, then that likely will bring in these actual young people that we want to bring into the body. So that's my perspective, is that I would say, I still agree that codification should still go move forward. I still agree with everyone's concepts that like this is a bigger conversation on how we bring young people into government and into these types of bodies to provide their voices. But I also want to ensure that it doesn't, keep it to where we keep expanding the age range, that it's going to mainly be focusing on 20s. I came on because I got an email about advisory bodies and I saw PCCEP, and I thought, as a young colored man in the Culling neighborhood who, hears gunshots every night, that, I want to say something when it comes to public safety. The other youth member, and I can speak, and from what they had told me, and they were open to me speaking out on this, they came across it because they were doing public safety research, and they were, interested in a job. And so how young people like myself have been coming across this has mainly just been miracles, not through community engagement. And so with this, I want to really change that. And if counselors have more specific questions, I'm happy to provide answers.
I thank you for coming up and being so articulate and also just explaining your experience. I thought it was really helpful. Councilor Zimmerman, right now, based on what we're experiencing with this dialogue, I heard 2 things. I heard 15. I heard more of a debate about the endpoint, and also I heard that perhaps the process wasn't complete because you weren't in the meeting where this was made. So I'm going to get out of the way now and let others decide. But at the moment, I don't think I could support this amendment based on what I just heard. Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Ryan. Councillor Koyama-Lane.
Thank you, Council President. I promise I'll be quick. Thank you for that, Councillor Ryan. That was very helpful. And thank you for engaging youth voice right in front of us and taking that seriously. When Councillor Pirtle-Guinea talked about how it can really depend on the kid, I absolutely agree with that. A lot of things can depend on where a kid's at, how they're developing, and glad that she mentioned that. And I will add also, connected to that, but also separate beyond just some cognitive developments, identity and experiences also can really vary with different kids. I will say when I was teaching fifth graders at Fabian School in the Concordia neighborhood, they're on Northeast Deacon. For those that aren't sure, kids come in usually 10 years old, 11, some might be 12 in fifth grade. There were absolutely kids that had thoughts, experiences, things to say about law enforcement in a way that not many kids at Sunnyside Environmental School, predominantly white school, would maybe have those same experiences. And in my classroom at Fabian, my fifth graders were predominantly kids of color, predominantly Black, African American. I find this conversation really interesting. I like the idea of 15 and having also just kind of a wider range there to get more applicants, and think that we can have more conversation. And for Councillor Novick, I think it's true that 25 is not a universal finish line for the brain. I love talking about the brain, but it is typically, from what I read, tell me if you see something different, research says that's when the prefrontal cortex is, like, I say to parents, is like more fully cooked. And that part is connected to weighing consequences, impulsivity, being able to suppress impulsives, and holding multiple pieces of information at the same time, and planning. And also for governmentally, that's like, that 26 is how long you can be on your parents' insurance. And okay, that's it.
Thank you, Councillor Koyama-Lane. Councillor Canal.
Yeah, I just wanted to add one other thing, and the staff may be able to verify this because I don't have an exact stat, but it's pretty clear. The vacancy rate in the youth seats is significantly higher, and so I want to posit three options here and just say that the idea of having a 24-year-old member is maybe not ideal to represent youth if it's all 24-year-olds, but it is significantly better than having no filled position at all. And I can tell you that I personally went to many places to try and solicit applications, and I want to acknowledge that it started out in more general spaces before the youth side came on board because of how challenging that is to figure out the right entry points, but it also included the more youth-focused part. I'll also say that there was a member who was recruited of a couple different groups that have had sort of youth assigned seats, two different people that I'm thinking of right now, where you recruit somebody and then you have to recruit them again for an at-large position, or reappoint them to an at-large position, and then go find another young person because you found them at the end of the age range. So it's quite the opposite to that. There is an incentive to recruit at the higher end of the range. There's actually an incentive to not recruit at the higher end of the range because you want people who are going to stay, and you want people who can continue to fill that seat for more than a single year. Or I think in this particular case, it was like 6 to 8 months is the person I'm thinking of before they had to be reappointed as an at-large member. So of these three options, yeah, it is factually accurate. Having some people in the high school age and some people in the college age are the highest preference. But I definitely wanted to note that if you're choosing between a plan B and a plan C, it is significantly better to have someone who is very recently out of the high school and college age years on it than a vacant position. We are really fortunate at the city right now that a lot of our positions are filled and that there's a lot of staff doing good recruitment, not just in this space, but I think we've talked about it in the Sustainability and Climate Commission, which is having youth member appointments coming up pretty soon too. But I want to just clarify, the incentive structure is not to leave it vacant, and it's not to have it be people at the top end of the range, because it's more work and it's more chaos when you have to churn through people. So having an upper end of the range allows for that conversation to continue, but does not in any way presuppose that we're going to be recruiting 24-year-olds. And I just wanted to flag that differential.
Thank you, Councillor Canal. Colleagues, there's 3:10. We still have 2 more items. There's no chance we're going to finish this today. Councillor Novick.
I just wanted to say that I personally would be inclined to what the youth members suggested of 15 to 22, while acknowledging what Councillor Canal said, that that there is a problem with vacancies. But I think that 15-year-olds have so much, there's a lot of 15-year-olds have interactions with police. So I would be supportive of keeping that end of the range, but I'd be open to cutting back from 25 to 22.
Thank you, Councillor Novick. Councillor Ryan.
I think I have a friendly amendment. I'm hoping. Councillor Zimmerman, 15 to 23.
Sounds great. Move it, I'll second it.
I move that the age range is 15 to 23.
Second.
Did we already move yours?
Yeah, it's an amendment to it.
We friendlied it.
It's not really a thing. We're supposed to withdraw it and then introduce a new one.
You can amend.
Point of order, you can amend an amendment on the.
All right, cool, great.
That's what just happened.
Okie doke. Okay, that sounds great. Colleagues, any further discussion on the now amended amendment? Rebecca, can we call the roll?
No, point of order.
Yeah.
What do you mean the now amended amendment? We still have to vote on the new amendment.
Right.
Right.
Proposal for an amended amendment.
So right now, we're going to call the roll on Councilor Ryan's new amendment, correct?
Yes.
Right, Rob? City Attorney is walking up. Roll.
Sorry. Robert Taylor, City Attorney. Jorge, what have you gotten us into here?
Apologies.
No, you're doing great. I was here last night when I heard him give his testimony, and I've appreciated this discussion today, and it's an important one. So if there's an amendment that's been made and seconded, and that's before the body, and then there is a desire to change that in some way, there's 3 ways to handle that. Friendly amendment is not one of them. But the 3 ways you can handle that is withdraw the thing that's in front of the body, wipe the slate clean, and just offer a new amendment in the form that you want.
Okay, so I'm offering to co-sponsor this amendment with Councilor Zimmerman, and it's 15 to 23.
Perfect. So that's one way to do it. So Councilor Zimmerman can withdraw his, you make a new one in the way you want it. Now that would be before the body. That's one way to do it. Another way to do it would be to adopt or reject the amendment that's currently pending. So if you could adopt Zimmerman's amendment and then offer a brand new one to tweak it a little more, to change one of the ages. So that's a second way you can do it. The third way you can do it is there's an amendment pending. Somebody can make a motion to amend the amendment to make a tweak to it. If there's a motion to amend the amendment, you have to vote on the motion to amend the amendment and then vote on the amendment itself. So those are 3 ways to do it.
Thank you.
I think often the easiest way to do it is if there's a wordsmith better way to pose an amendment, just withdraw the one that's pending and replace it with a brand new one.
Exactly.
Yeah, thank you.
That'll save us a few minutes.
Councilor Smith, since you were my second, I'll pull back Zimmerman 1 and propose Ryan Zimmerman 1, which is changing the age from 15 to 23. Councilor Ryan, did I hear that right?
Yes.
Are you amenable to that, Councilor Smith,
Yep.
as the second?
Second.
Thank you.
Okie doke. Great. Thank you all. Now we have a new amendment.
Thank you, Robert Taylor.
To Councilor Ryan, to the amendment?
Oh, no.
Okay, Councilor Zimmerman to the amendment. Councilor Avalos to the amendment.
Yeah, I appreciate the discussion. I think at the end of the day, I'm just going to keep it original. I think it's been discussed. You brought it forward as 15 to 25. There's logic for enhancing that range. I don't plan on changing it, so I'm voting no.
Thank you, Councilor Avalos. Councilor Canal.
Yeah, I think it's worth, I agree with Councilor Avalos. I'll just note, I think it's worth noting, and the reason I said this earlier, but I didn't make clear why, the legislative intent is to still try to get people who accurately represent youth. I'm speaking as a co-sponsor of it here, and I imagine the mayor will agree, or the mayor's office will agree, that it's to accurately and adequately represent youth, which is impossible to do with two people, but the best you can do. And so I think that legislative intent for me is sufficient the way it is, and that's why I'll be voting no on the change.
Thank you, Councilor Canal. Rebecca, can we please call the roll on the Zimmerman-Ryan amendment?
Calling, yep, Ryan, Zimmerman, 1. Canal.
No.
Pertl-Guiney.
Aye.
Ryan.
Aye.
Koyama Lane. Absent. Murillo.
Aye.
Novick.
In part because Ryan Zimmerman was for a period my favorite baseball player. Aye.
Clark.
Aye.
Green.
Aye.
Zimmerman.
Aye.
Avalos.
No.
Smith.
Aye.
Dunphy.
Aye.
The amendment is approved with 9 aye, 2 no, and 1 absent.
Colleagues, any further discussion on the now amended emergency ordinance? This will require 9 votes to pass. Rebecca, can we please call the roll on the now amended emergency ordinance?
Calling the roll on the emergency ordinance document 2026-126. Canal.
Thank you. Aye.
Pertl-Guiney.
Aye.
Ryan.
Aye.
Koyama Lane. Absent. Murillo.
Aye.
Novick.
Aye.
Clark.
Aye.
Green.
Aye.
Zimmerman.
Aye.
Avalos.
Aye.
Smith.
Aye.
Dunphy.
Aye.
And the ordinance passes with 11 aye votes, 1 absent.
Thank you all very much, and thank you for your patience. Please call item 11.
Item 11, Future Vision Commission Presentation, document number 2026-129.
Colleagues, our colleague, Pertl-Guiney, is joining us from the other side of the dais, along with Councilor Gonzalez from Metro. So welcome. I will turn it over to you all.
Thank you so much, Council President, colleagues. I appreciate the time today. We are excited to have the opportunity to share some of the work that's been happening on Metro's Future Vision Commission. And I want to thank Councilor Juan Carlos Gonzalez and Jessica, I believe there's other staff with us here today too, for partnering on the presentation, and Councilor, your staff, Robin Yee's help in getting this organized. It's an honor to serve as Portland City Council's representative on the Future Vision Commission and one of the City of Portland's representatives to that commission. You'll hear more briefly in a presentation about the Future Vision Commission, but in brief, it's a Metro-led effort to develop a shared 50-year look at the greater region. It brings together leaders from across jurisdictions, sectors, local government, business, nonprofits, academia, to hopefully create a framework that will guide future regional plans. At Metro, yes, but ideally within all of the cities and counties in our region. Our Metro region is a growing region, and as we grow, we're either going to do that as separate cities that bump into each other, physically, yes, but also philosophically, or we're going to build an interconnected future together, united by a shared vision. If we want this to be a great place for our kids and our grandkids to grow up, we need to do that. From Portland's perspective, this matters. We are geographically toward the center of the region, And we know that our work impacts our neighbors and theirs impacts us. So in this role, I've tried to bring Portland's priorities forward. But I also know that today's timing is important because I can't bring that work forward alone. And the Future Vision Commission is in an outreach period. You'll hear more about that, but at the end of today, I want you to know that I'm asking for your help. I'm asking for your help because if we do this visioning work right, if we reach out to everybody across the region and hear all of the good ideas that all of our constituents have and that folks from our neighboring cities have as well, we will create an incredible framework for the future of this region that we are a part of. And I know that I can't do that alone. I am excited to turn this over to Councilor Gonzalez to share a little bit about the work which he is leading. And I hope that we all can engage more in it moving forward.
Thank you so much, Councilor. Council President Dunphy, Portland City Council. For the record, my name is Juan Carlos Gonzalez, and I am a Metro Councilor for District 4, which is Western Washington County, but I am the proud chair of the Future Vision Commission, and I want to thank Councilor Purtle Guinea for inviting me today, giving me the opportunity to share some of the work with you. And I just want to start by saying this, that moments like this don't come along very often for regions or for cities like Portland and those in the region. We are at one of those moments where our future is still flexible, where the decisions that we make now will genuinely shape how millions of people live, move, and thrive for decades. The Metro Future Vision isn't just a planning exercise. It's not a document that sits on a shelf. It's an opportunity, one of the biggest that we've had in a generation, to decide what kind of region we actually want to be. Portland knows how to do this. This city has a long history of leaning into the future, of making brave regional choices before they were popular, and then watching them become models for the rest of the country. Change is coming whether we plan for it or not, and the real question is, do we want change to happen to us? I'd argue that we want to design it together. Metro's role here is to create alignment so that the values that Portland already leads with can show up at a regional scale with real support behind them. This vision is strongest when Portland is at the table helping shape it, when regional direction and city leadership are pulling in the same direction. And my purpose here is to invite you and your communities into shaping this vision with us. Because when Portland and the region move forward together, really powerful things can happen. So if we could go to the next slide. I'm also joined by Jessa Deb, project manager of Future Vision, who will be talking a little bit later. But first, let me start at the beginning. The year is 1992. It's November. Whitney Houston's I Will Always Love You has just been released and is quickly climbing to the top of the Billboard charts to replace Boyz II Men's End of the Road. What else is happening in 1992? Bill Clinton has just been elected. Locally, Vera Katz beat out Earl Blumenauer for City of Portland mayor. The Dream Team is making basketball history in the Memorial Coliseum. The local photo here is one of the Lovejoy Viaduct that used to run from the Broadway Bridge to 14th Avenue, the removal of which helped open up to the Pearl redevelopment. And also in 1992, yours truly was born. And important for Metro, in 1992, Portland area voters approved the charter for a unique regional government called Metro. Next slide, sorry, Jess. The charter states that Metro's most important service is to be regional planning and policy making, to preserve and enhance the quality of life in the environment for us and for the folks that come after us. As such, the first order of business prescribed for the agency was to create a future vision, a long-term visionary outlook for at least a 50-year period. This document is not a policy itself, but it is a guided development of key policies for the region, and the updated future vision will do that again. Next slide. So the current vision is almost older than me because this vision was adopted in 1995. Again, it is not a regulatory document. It is a shared version covering the region and not just Metro as an agency. And I think when most people think about a regional vision for Metro, they think about the map here, the one that you see to the right. And that is the 2040 growth concept. and also the regional framework plan that unites Metro's adopted policies related to land use, transportation, parks, water quality, and more. That was adopted in 1997 and includes the 2040 growth concept. And the framework plan forms the basis for coordination of city comprehensive plans and implementing regulations across the region to implement the concept. And I love the list of engagement tactics that were used to create some of these foundational items. So there were videos at Blockbuster. There was a comment phone line that you could dial into. We mailed paper surveys to households. There were 3D glasses, like the little red and blue things, and maps that were placed all over coffee shops around the region. I can't think of a more Portland thing than that. Next slide, please. So the outcomes of this vision have included the redevelopment of all parts of Portland and all parts of greater Portland here. We wanted to make sure to pull some out that I think speak to each of, at least one of each of your districts. We see Lentz, Alberta, Division, South Waterfront. Each one of these communities and neighborhoods included a pretty significant thing in the future vision, which then informed the 2040 growth concept. And we also know that not every outcome that we hope for has been achieved for every resident in the region, because different communities have experienced this growth and changed differently. And we as government actors have changed our approaches over time, as we've also had to learn hard lessons from community about things like displacement. In some ways, we have more tools than before. One tool we have now that we didn't have before, City of Portland and Metro have passed affordable housing bonds, which have had a really important impact on our planning. Next slide. So why update this vision now? There's no question that right now we are in a tough time. I think we see it every day in the city and in the region, but it's also a time when having a designated space to look out at the horizon rather than our day-to-day allows us all the license and space to dream a little bit. 50 years is a time horizon where so much can change. So many of our biggest issues today are the ones that cross jurisdictional boundaries. And we want this process to be one where we open up the conversations about how that scale can help us envision a different future together and then work across silos to do that. Whether government boundaries or those perceived divides between government, business, community organizations, and philanthropy. And while a lot of the values we see in that 1995 vision still resonate, the welfare of children is critical to our present and future well-being. All residents are supported in being well-informed and active participants in civic life, and people are enabled to live close to the beauty and inspiration of nature. There are others that are dated, and a discussion of our 21st century concept of equity is wholly missing, along with considerations of key issues such as climate change. I think this is, again, a perfect time for renewal and recommitment. So I gotta say, I'm super excited about this project, y'all. The future vision will be co-created over several phases. This is one of our best efforts at trying to delineate a process over 18 months. So I'm here with you today as a part of a call to action so you can help us understand what it means to have regional values. And this community feedback that we get from you and from the region will be synthesized and confirmed by community alongside what we are calling drivers of change. And then those drivers of change are things like climate change, artificial intelligence, remote work, the rise of disinformation, decrease in the trust in government, et cetera. And drivers are broad long-term trends that are likely to have a significant impact on our future. So in this research, we are working to understand big questions like, where have we been? What does our past growth and outcomes tell us about who was impacted and how? Where are we going? What types of major shifts could happen that may define our future? What will that vision look like? How will Metro represent and translate the region's values into a future forward vision to the public and its partners? So I just want to recognize that so much of this good work has already been done around the region to define a vision for our area, for this area. So we want to start this work with a scan of both government and non-government visioning work. And this work has ranged across multiple geographies, and we wanted to pull out some of the plans that specifically impact and influence the City of Portland efforts. The Prosperous Advanced Portland Plan, the 2035 Comp Plan, Albina Vision, I mean, you name it. There's no shortage of plans that build on this foundation of the future vision, even though this old document is not something that we always think about. So without further ado, I want to hand it off to Jess to help talk about some of the more tactical things that we're doing to implement this. And thank you again for having us.
Great, thanks, Counselor. So for the record, again, my name is Jess Sadeb. I'm a principal regional planner at Metro and the project manager for this effort. This really, as Counselor Gonzalez and Counselor Purtle-Guinea have said, is something that needs to knit together who we are and have been as a region. So it's really grounded in this place and the people who comprise who we are, who we identify as, and who we want to be in the future. But it needs to be looking forward as well. You know, people have lived at the confluence of these rivers for generations and will be here for generations to come. And it's a weighty responsibility to be thinking it in that 50-year time horizon and helping create that future. One thing that we've really been talking about is the way that people live their lives doesn't stop at city boundaries. You know, residents of Portland go see shows at the Reeser in Beaverton. They truck their kids to soccer tournaments in Damascus. And then people from all corners of the region come to Portland for the Blazers, soon for the Fire, for medical appointments, and for work. And those systems that are shaping our future also don't stop at city boundaries, and that's one of the reasons why doing this at a regional scale really is so important. And we're lucky to be guided in this work by the Future Vision Commission, of which Councilor Purtle-Guinea is one of the members. This is a body that is stood up as a one-time organization for just this purpose of updating the vision. They were appointed by Metro Council last year. Part of their role is to act as project ambassadors to their communities, whoever that may be. Today, the community we're talking to is Portland City Council and the residents of the city of Portland. Other folks on this committee represent small business owners. They represent folks who are larger business owners or involved in the business community. They represent folks who lead community-based organizations, folks who are involved in nature and conservation organizations. And then there are also some folks on this group who just saw the opportunity and took it because they really care about this region and they want to help make it better. So this group so far has done work to review those existing visions and long-range plans, some of which Councilor Gonzalez just showed up on the screen. And one thing we did in that review with this group was ask people to inhabit a different role. So I don't remember what vision Councilor Purtle-Guinea was tasked with reviewing in that meeting, but we made everybody switch it up so that they were taking a different perspective. I will guarantee you that she did not read a plan from the city of Portland, and that, for instance, Mayor Pace from Hillsborough, who is also in this body, was not reading her own plan. We're really asking people to expand their perspective and live that regional crossover that we're really looking for. One other thing we're doing with this group is often they are meeting at the Metro Regional Center, but again, to broaden that perspective, we are moving these meetings around the region to get people exposed to different parts of our geography, but also exposed to things that are really important pieces of who we are and assets of the region. So in March, we were able to meet Center Court at the Moda Center, realizing Councilor Gonzalez's longtime dream of having a meeting in the Moda Center. We will be meeting at the beautiful new East County Library in Gresham once that's open. Very later in the process, we'll meet at the Port of Portland and sort of get to experience the great asset that PDX is to this region. So really trying to make the experience that the folks are having on this commission be something that is unique to this process and kind of embodies what we're trying to get out of it. These are the principles upon which we are doing our community engagement. I was just talking about the commission, and it's really important that that's a diverse and representative body of the region, but their job is to interpret and hear from us what we are hearing from the community. Overall, we are using these principles that encourage us to build on and grow relationships, create a vision with a sense of ownership from the broader region. That's something that's really community created. Challenge ourselves to engage with more creative and accessible engagement tools so we can meet people where they're at in a way that feels both meaningful and fun. And as we have said, to lift up and recognize past visioning work from around the region. So this is just a very high level of how we're doing that. Councilor earlier mentioned that we're in the middle of this round of engagement on regional values. We will have another big round of engagement near the end of this year, beginning of the next, where we're asking people to review that draft vision and tell us what their key priorities are for moving into implementation. This summer, we'll be out in community at events reminding people that we're doing this work and hopefully engaging in some fun, family-friendly activities to get people into that futures mindset. Thinking on a 50-year time horizon is not something that most people do every day, so it takes some work to get people to think that way. We are also very conscious in this process of engaging with youth, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. Obviously, you all have a lot of thoughts about how youth can be important to public processes, and so we're trying to do that with this project as well. And then lastly, I want to point to the part of this process where pen will really be put to paper on the aspirations, the meat of this vision. In the early fall, we'll be bringing together cross-sector leaders from government, business, community-based organizations, and philanthropy to be the folks who are the first putting pen to paper on what those aspirations look like at a summit, and then some subsequent tables after that. One thing I really want to call out is how we are pushing the boundaries with community engagement. 50 years, as I said, is a hard timeline to think on, and who better to help us think creatively and imagine unknown futures and flex our muscles than the artists of this region. Bringing arts and culture into this work makes it more human, more relatable. It also gives folks a way to engage for whom words on the page are maybe not the best way to express themselves, and it's also just so much a part of who we are as Greater Portland. To do this, we've contracted with an amazing artist to be our arts lead. Subhashini Ganesan Forbes is a name that might be familiar to some folks here. She was the former Creative Poet Laureate of Portland, really engaged and involved advocate in the arts world here in this region. She is guiding our staff work to integrate arts and engagement into this project process. One of the most powerful ways we've done that so far is a brief artist residency at Metro, where 4 multidisciplinary artists came together to create a piece of work in 2.5 days that they then shared with us as staff, members of the public, invited guests, members of the Future Vision Commission, and Metro Council. It was a really powerful opportunity to be reminded of the importance of emotion in our planning and government processes, and to not separate the way that we feel about something from our work, and also to recognize that arts can really bring people to the fore, the humanity that we have to deal with and we have to serve as public servants. So we're also looking ahead to potential grants to artists later in this process, which is really exciting, so stay tuned for that. And then lastly for me, our Future Vision Youth Committee. This is not the first time Metro has stood up a youth committee for a project or a process, but it's something we're really excited and happy about for this, because thinking 50 years in the future, these folks are significantly more likely to be around than your mostly middle-aged project team. So this group is going to be deeply involved with the development of the vision, meeting 12 times over the next year. Our engagement strategy really is written to ensure that their voices are heard first in the process and embedded in our work along the way. They'll advise us on how to best message opportunities in this project to a younger audience, figuring out how we can make it feel relevant and important. We've outlined multiple events and activities so that this group feels meaningfully integrated with the commission, has opportunities to engage with Metro Council, and invitation to expert panels and other project events. It's really designed as well as a learning opportunity for these committee members who will be able to bring this experience into other civic engagement opportunities around the region. One of their biggest roles will be convening and guiding the form of a youth summit, which will be an opportunity for broad youth engagement across the region. These folks will also be liaisons to their own committee or their own communities throughout the region, whether that's their school, their teams, their clubs, just the folks that they hang out with on a day-to-day So we're really excited about the opportunity that bringing these voices into the process has for expanding our thinking. Last week was the first time that they came and visited the commission and shared some of the thoughts that have come up just in their first 2 meetings. And, you know, it's striking. I have to admit that I don't spend a ton of time hearing from folks ages 15 to 24, and it's a really enlightening process to just sit and listen to the opinions of young people and how articulate and thoughtful they can be, and just the ways that they break open our thinking. So super happy to have them. I'll turn it back to Councilor Gonzalez to just close us out with a little bit more about our current engagement.
Yeah, thank you, Jess. So our ask is super simple, because what we want your help with is just to get this current engagement phase out to people that might not always participate in regional processes. We have this values engagement that runs through mid-May, and there's multiple ways for us to do that. There's an online survey. We have conversation kits, bookmarks. There's a QR code here. I mean, I would welcome you to pull up your phones. It's just a really simple survey, actually, so that we actually are able to pull information from folks. We believe that regional values, they form from the foundation of every element of the vision, because we want to think about housing, transportation, climate, the economy, equity, and we know that we want to get these values right. And in order to do so, we need to hear from a broad range of perspectives. And so you've heard a lot about this theme of cross-cutting, reaching different parts of our community. Next slide, just to wrap up here. And with a final thank you from me, and as we wrap up, I hope to be able to come back and share, especially with what some of these drivers of change are, what futurists are looking to 50 years from now. But we really want to thank you for being engaged in this. Again, a huge thank you to Councilor Pirtle-Guinea, and to you for your hard work for this beautiful city that we all love. And may we be good stewards for this year and next year and the next 50 years. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Colleagues, now is an opportunity for us to ask questions or discussion. Councilor Canal.
Thank you so much for the presentation. Thank you, Councilor Pirtle-Guinea. Thank you, Councilor Carlos Gonzalez. I forgot that they're councilors as well. So I wanted to ask a little bit just in terms of the desired end goal of this process. I have looked at the 1995 outcome, the actual report, the vision report that came out at the end, and I was really struck by not only the values but the actual suggestions after it. I don't really know the header on it, if it's portions of the vision itself, but is that the sort of way you anticipate the final document looking in terms of the level of specificity of the recommendations, in terms of the types of topics it'll cover?
Thanks, Counselor. I love that you looked that up. I'm going to lean on Jess here, because we are actively thinking about what does the specific document look like and what we want to build on, and some of the gaps from the last plan.
Yeah. Thanks for the question, Councilor Canal. For one, we definitely want the actual form and format of this document to be significantly more engaging than the one from 1995. We want this to be something that someone could either pick up and read, that they could watch a video about, that they could hear their neighbors talk about in a video. There are a lot of other ways that we want folks to actually engage with the content of that. To the question about the content of the vision, the topics, the level of specificity, I think that it will end up being similar to the existing vision in that sense. When you look out 50 years, there is so much uncertainty inherent in that timeline that we have to really rely on those values, those bedrock foundational things of who we collectively want to be as a region and what we want to see. I think it's fairly likely that it will end up being structured in a similar way. For those who have not dived in and read the 1995 vision, it is structured much more in a set of scales. So what do we want to see for the individual, for the community, for this place? it makes a lot more sense to think in those kinds of topic areas rather than what do we want to see for transportation, for the economy, for the environment when you're talking 50 years and things are so integrated as systems. So I would anticipate that it is more similar to that 95 vision in the structural sense than something like a comp plan that is more structured around those ways that you implement and move toward a vision. Transportation is a means to an end of a thriving region. Preserving the environment is a means to the end of a thriving region also. And so we're really thinking about those more topical-based areas as ways that we will implement the vision at Metro and at other partner agencies around the region.
And importantly, we want this to be a vision that is distinctly Greater Portland and not just something that we feel like could be plopped in another major city that truly reflects, I think, the values and what makes us special.
Yeah, thank you for that. What has the process been at Metro for evaluating progress towards that particular vision? And what do you expect it to be for this one when it's completed?
Thanks. Yeah, we're dedicating quite a bit of time in auditing and looking at different equity assessments of the work that we've done. I know that we have a panel coming up as well, led by Acting President Duncan Wong, to look at some of the iterations of the plan. But Jess, do you want to talk about how we're doing that on the staff side?
Sure. So the most direct outcome of the prior future vision was the creation of the 2040 growth concept, that map that Councilor Gonzalez had up earlier, which is the land use policy for the region. So what we are doing in looking back is looking at what the outcomes have been from implementing that particular piece of policy, because it is the most direct line. In the early 90s, Metro's remit really was mostly around land use policy, transportation, and our agency's role in the region has greatly expanded and changed since then. We didn't have a housing department. We didn't own upwards of 20,000 acres of parks and natural areas at that time. So really what we've been looking at is what has implementation of that growth concept looked like. The first taste of that was just presented at the commission meeting last week. That material is going to come to Metro Council in May. So that's really the way that we are evaluating how the vision has impacted the region. We do not have a plan yet for how we would evaluate the impact of the vision we're currently developing over the next 50 years. Just want to be honest that that's not something that we've developed yet.
Yeah, the reason I'm asking, and I understand very well what you're saying about the part that has the most clear deliverables being the part that most directly relates to the mission of Metro at the time. As you vision, I would note that the 1995 vision has categories that relate to things outside of Metro's current remit as well.
Yep.
Not just things that have been added subsequently. And that disparity can create a push to limit what you're talking about. And I wanted to, or to expand. What I would say is the way out of that, because I do want you to keep talking about these other issues too, and I'm going to give a specific example in a moment, is to maybe partner with the counties and the cities to help with that evaluative process. You mentioned, and I really appreciate the note that there are a lot of things that have changed in terms of forward-looking on issues like equity. I read the equity section is very class-oriented, very poverty-oriented. It doesn't have quite the same lenses that we now have.
Yep.
But there are some really forward-looking things that I was very surprised to find in a document from that time frame. And I just wanted to know, it's on page 12, it's the safety section. And Metro doesn't really have much of a direct role in this, but I don't want you to shy away from it as part of this process, because I would love to iterate on this. If you copied and pasted it, it would be a good vision for today. And I think that we can learn from that too. Yeah. And I just want to note that it includes, our definition of personal safety extends from the elimination of prejudice to the physical protection of life and property from criminal harm. Our hope and expectation is for a society whose residents do not expect safety or protection to rely on guns or physical violence. That was not a common way of talking about things in government in the 90s. And I think it's really incredible that a community-centered process led to that. So I encourage that as well. And if you, I don't know, being remote, I can't tell if you were in the back of the room earlier for some of the previous items, but there are groups like PCCEP that I can help, and I know other counselors would love to help connect this process with, obviously through our representative, Councilor Pearl Guinea, to try and connect that better into the process, because I really do appreciate what's been worked on there. I have other questions, but I see other people in the queue, so I'll come back around.
Thank you, Counselor, for that.
Counselor, I'll just mention that in one of the exercises that the commission did, there actually was conversation about safety and what a safe community feels like. So I don't know exactly what will be in the report, but that has been one of the topics that commissioners have at least started to grapple with and think about.
Love to hear it. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilor Canal. Councilor Green.
Yeah, thank you so much, counselors. I really appreciate the opportunity for us to be directly engaged with this regional planning work. Councilor Juan Carlos Gonzalez, you know I love regionalism. I'm glad that Councilor Pearl Guinea is engaged on this directly. I think, you know, I have all sorts of ideas on what I think a 50-year plan would be, and I'm sure I'll fill out the survey myself.
Thank you.
And you'll hear my ideas at many different junctures. But I guess my question is I want to understand specifically what your ask is for us, because Councilor Pearl Guinea, you started by saying we need your help. Are you just, I see that there's a deadline of May 15th for the survey. Is it sort of like help us boost the survey? Is it sort of thinking about structuring our town halls in a little bit more of a facilitated manner around the importance of the document? Is there something else that you would like us to orient around that maybe came out of the conversations of the commission? I just want to be as helpful as possible.
Thanks for the question, Councilor Green. I think I always want to have like a really tangible call to action. And right now, the very tangible call to action is that we do have an important engagement on regional values. And beyond that, I would absolutely love for you and for your peers to consider how, as you're engaging the community more broadly over the next 12 months, as people are talking about, you know, fear of the future or desires for the future, to also mention this project as an opportunity to weave that in. And we have no shortage of materials and things that we can bring to you or share with you for you to be able to drop off or for to give to folks, because there are subsequent engagement opportunities, and we have summits for youth, summits for adults. I mean, you name it. But I also want to lean on Councilor Pearl Guinea here.
Yeah, I think I'll give 4 concrete ways to engage, 2 of which happen right now and 2 of which will happen later. You asked about town halls, and I had hoped to be able to come to everybody with an ask to incorporate this into town halls, but because of some timing hiccups with getting this scheduled and the budget season, that didn't feel like an appropriate ask at this time. But more on that in a minute. For right now, I think it would be fantastic if as many counselors as possible could help boost that survey. I'd like to make sure that we hear from as many Portlanders as possible, and I know that I can't reach as many Portlanders as possible on my own, but with the 11 of you helping, we can reach a lot more people. So that's the first ask. The second ask, which goes along with that, is I believe there are postcards that people can fill out if an online survey is not the right format for them. If you are interested, I am happy to facilitate getting postcards for any office that has upcoming events that would like them for your constituents to fill out from our partners at Metro. Those are the 2 asks right now. The third ask is when the Youth Summit comes up this summer, I would love to be able to get materials to everybody to make sure that youth between the ages of, we're doing 15 to 24, right? We've been throwing out a lot of numbers today. Youth between the ages of 15 and 24 who you are in contact with, get that information to help boost participation. And the fourth ask would be when the second public engagement period opens, which is toward the end of this year, to think about perhaps boosting that engagement through your town halls and your other outreach, and using that as an intentional time to share information with people, since the timing just did not work to do that as we all do budget town halls right now. Is that concrete enough?
Thank you for being, yeah, that's very clear, direct call to action. I'm an organizer, so I want to see us leave that with those things very clear. I'm happy to tap in. We will help with that. We were already planning some sort of youth engagement stuff, so this is a great opportunity to fold that in. I look forward to being supportive, and just, while I have the floor and while we're on it, the next 50 years, this time period, it's all about climate change resiliency and building cities that allow us to decouple from carbon and allow us to be affordable. And so that's already what I'm hearing from my constituents. And so I'll do my part to help pull that conversation into this planning process. So I thank you so much for presenting today.
Thanks, Councilor, and for your commitment to regionalism too. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Councilor Green. Councilor Smith.
Thank you, Council President. Thank you all for giving this presentation today. And I'm glad you gave us some marching orders, Councilor Porto-Guinea, because my question was going to be, do you have an equity lens in terms of the youth interaction that you're going to have? Because I think it's so important that we make sure we have East Portland youth that participate with this, and knowing that you're going to have a summit this summer. So that was good information. Just wanted to get your ideas when you were thinking about this. How were you thinking about engaging the youth in East Portland?
Thank you, Councilor Smith. Jess, can I tap into you on that? I mean, we've tried to be very expansive with our partnerships and ensuring that we're leading with the council. When we initiated this process, wanted to make sure we led not just with a geographic equity, but with a strong racial justice lens as well, which is a driving principle of our work. So I want to open it with that. And as we know, our staff help implement and operationalize that vision. So Jess, if you could please speak to that.
Yeah, thanks for the question, Councilor Smith. I will say I know that the information about the youth who are on that committee is now on our project website, so you can see the names and the districts Metro Council districts that those youth represent. I mentioned that we worked with Next Up and Blueprint Foundation to recruit the youth for that group, and they helped guide our selection of who's on that committee. The committee, I will not state demographics here, but they are a very diverse group of young people. I'm not entirely sure who on that group is from East Portland, but if you look, they are identified by Metro Council District. So Councilor Simpson's District 1 would include East Portland. I will say that one of the other government representatives on the commission is Commissioner Jones-Dixon, and he has very strong interest as well in making sure that his district is very well engaged, covering East Portland and East County. We are asking the youth themselves to tap into their own networks, and so with their help, they will help guide us on what are the venues within their own communities that are most helpful to get the word out. But if you have suggestions about reaching young folks in your district, please.
I want to caution you, and I like all those organizations you talked about being too political with this. When you say you have Next Up, that triggers something for me, that we're not getting all the folks, we're getting the most engaged folks, because those folks are highly engaged. And I'm talking about an equity lens that will work with, say, our Summer Works program, and we get the most underserved kids that we spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to make sure that they have an experience either in city government or county government. And so I was interested in knowing where is all this work being paid for? Do you have a dedicated source of funding that's paying for this 50-year vision?
Yeah, I mean, it's funded by Metro general funds.
So it's general funds. So will you have a youth coordinator?
There is a staff member within the planning department who it is her job to work with Next Up and Blueprint to guide the work of that commission, that youth committee. Yep.
And I don't have a problem with pushing this out to our networks, through social media, but I want to make sure that we have a well-rounded group of young people to participate, because part of our job is to also make people aware. And if we're not engaging folks that are not aware and bringing more to the table, and we're just talking to a particular type of student who's already engaged, then I think we're not doing our job the way we need to do it. but I appreciate you and appreciate you doing this youth summit, because anytime we can gather all the young people together and engage them about what's going to be happening, not just next year, but 50 years, that's a task. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. We will certainly, we'd love to follow up with you as well to make sure that we.
Can you, because I want to give you some emails and ways to engage our summer works folks.
Yeah, sounds like an excellent opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Smith. Councilor Ryan.
Yes, thanks, Council President. Councilors Carlos, Pertolgini, and Jess, right? Jess.
Yes, thanks.
Well, thanks for being here. This was great. I love stuff like this. So I'm just kind of riffing off what I just heard, and here it goes. I really appreciate you lifting youth and definitely the arts. I trust with Sue B involved, you included the report that she was really passionate about. It's very good, Our Creative Future. Is that part of your, Jess, you know about that report?
I do, yes.
Okay, great. And it just underscores a lot of what you already know, but I think a lot of times the arts gets dismissed as being such a big economic driver. And countless cities, when they're in challenges like we are right now, the arts have been that catalyst that takes you from blight to bustling. And countless neighborhoods are turned around from the arts, and our downtown plan must include the arts to bring us back. So I just am happy to hear that. I couldn't find a list of participants in what I have in front of me, but it must be on the website.
It is. Our website is oregonmetro.gov/futurevision.
Okay.
So on that, there's an overview of the project, and you can find the names of the participants of both the Future Vision Commission that Councilor Pertolgini sits on, and then also the members of the Youth Committee.
Okay. How many are on the meetings that you go
Following the
to?
meeting today, I can make sure that my office gets links to both of those lists, as well as some of the other work of the commission, and the link to the survey out to everybody's offices.
Great. And thank you for representing us. A little jealous, but thank you for representing us. You know, I'm old enough to know what happened in 1992. It's really fascinating to be old enough to sit up here and listen to someone like you say you were born then. But I think we have to remember what was going on then. Like, we were just coming out of our timber dependency. That was big. Like, a lot of us had to leave our hometown. I'd be one of them, because I didn't come from a connected network. So I had to leave Portland because there were no jobs when I got out of college in 84, 85, 86. There just weren't any. It was pretty bad, or we had an economic hardship. And we worked really hard to figure out how to get out of that. We figured out how to become a hub. Well, we had great stories. We had a little tiny sneaker making company that had this waffle idea, and before you know it, they became a bustling small business, and now we know it's our only Fortune 500 in the state. That's Nike. And that started as a small business. And Intel, of course, really grew as a chip-making manufacturer and provided so many vendors. And you were living out that area where there's actually still a lot of economic prosperity. And we had Tektronix before that, which really brought a lot of intelligence to the region. We recruited so many brilliant people that don't get lifted enough. My point is, I think a lot of us are wondering, where are those people today? What's happening? And I think some of it is, the political sector, and we're part of that. There's a distance between the political sector and people who are working in the private sector, who are working their tails off trying to make bank right now and are trying to hang in there. And I'm just noticing that dissonance more and more, and it concerns me. And I just want to make sure that we have people at the table that have that voice. I also am concerned about population trends where we still have a pretty good flow of 20-somethings moving in, but in the 30s, when people move into usually their more earning potential years, there's more of a trend where they're moving out of the region. And that's when they create entrepreneurism, create more job offerings for as their companies grow. And so I think we need to get the heart of the matter of what's going on. I know that when you look at data, Multnomah County is a little bit of a donut. So I see that you have Clark County represented. Is that correct? I thought I saw Mary Ann in one of the photos.
Mary Ann's on it, yep.
That's really good. I just hope that we continue to include that voice that might not be always comfortable for the political sector to listen to, because I want to hear I'll just say it. I want people who are young and ambitious that want to build amazing things and grow companies. I still believe in that. And I think they can do it in a way that's not harmful to the environment, but just keeps attracting other creative, ambitious types that want to build something here. And I hope that that's part of the dialogue. So now I'm going to ask you, has economic challenges that currently exist today, is that coming up? Are we having those hard truth conversations at the table?
I would say certainly so. And I think, Counselor, I see that represented both in the conversations that are being had and also in the people who are around the table. There are folks from the business sector, including investors and entrepreneurs at the table, as well as various community leaders, as well as young people who wear both those hats and other hats at the table. As we have talked about some of the greatest challenges facing our region, certainly the economy and wage growth and ensuring that everybody has access to a good job is something that has come up from multiple people around the table. Good jobs is something that I bring up in almost any space that I am in, and I have been beat to saying it almost every time as we go around the table thinking about challenges. Not that alone. I know there are many other issues that our city cares about and that I have also been representing there, but specifically to answer this question.
That's good to hear, because I listen to people who are multi-generational Oregonians that are giving up. And that's not good, because you want people that have a lot of love for this place where they feel connected to, and they want to continue to be able to be prosperous here. And losing those type of accounts, if you will, if you're thinking of sales, are never good for any organization, and that includes the public purse. And so I'm really happy to hear that, but I hope that we continue to have some humbling moments in the political sector as we listen to what they're going through, so we can figure out how this region can be prosperous in the future. And so I just had to make that case. And it sounds like you heard it, that you're welcoming them to the table. I hope at the meetings you're allowing them to sit next to people like you. And I'm a real big believer in seating charts at such meetings, because too often people clump with the same people that they already know. Don't do that.
Best believe, yeah.
Y'all need to, do you do the seating charts?
Yeah, of course.
I do the seating chart before every meeting and make people sit next to different people.
All right, Jess, I just became a big fan of yours, probably because I used to do that, and people would wonder why I did that. I know exactly why I did that, because it allowed the organization that I was leading to be so much more successful.
Yes, there's a lot of dinner party thinking that happens before this.
Yeah, Portland, stop being so nice. It's like we have to let tension be a positive thing in a meeting. When there's tension in the room, then you're getting to truth, and then you're going to get to some new action that's much needed. So I urge you to welcome those moments where people aren't in agreement. Because if you leave every meeting where everyone just thinks everything's great, I don't believe you. And I don't believe we're going to have whatever this report is called, a prosperous future. Yeah.
Yes, I'm remembering the meeting where we were working on our future thinking, and we were asked some open-ended questions and then told to stand up and move ourselves across the room, depending on where we fell on the spectrum of our answer to that question. And then the facilitator intentionally chose people from both extremes in the middle to share their perspective on each question, to make sure we were sitting with those different perspectives.
Oh, good. Now I'm curious, who's your facilitator?
I don't remember who facilitated that session.
Yeah, one of the members of our consultant team is an organization called Institute for the Future, who are
I got a giggle out of this, Councilor.
I know, got a giggle. They're a decades-old futures and foresight research and education organization that works with lots of different types of clients, including us. They're actually also currently working with 1803 Fund. They did some work in the past with Thousand Friends of Oregon.
Remarkable group.
Yeah, they're really helping us break out of planning and think about futures and visioning, because 50 years is not a planning time horizon, and it was something that was very important to us in building the group that was going to be our consultant team on this project.
Okay, there's so many more questions, but we're running out of time. Thank you for the 7 minutes I just had. Appreciate it.
Counselor.
Thank you, Councilor Ryan. I put myself in the queue just to say something. Let's call attention. Let's do it. I have been on a bit of a crusade since I got elected, and in many ways for the last decade, that the city of Portland is the city that plans. And it's sort of a going expression that you're not going to get anything done unless it's in a plan, but just because it's in a plan doesn't mean it's going to get done. And I hate the culture of creating beautiful PDFs that live on someone's desktop and never see the light of day. And even a finer point, I am now getting feedback from my constituents in East Portland who have said, why do you keep asking us to show up to roundtable meetings with a carafe of coffee in the corner? When you ask us what kind of housing we want in our community, we tell you, and then you don't do anything with it for 10, 20, 30 years. I hope that you all recognize that you're being very intentional about creating the plan, but the plan is a means to an end. It is not an end in and of itself. And so we have to drive towards progress. We have to drive towards actionable steps. And I hope that implementation and next steps are the core driving focus as you are finalizing this plan, that it is formatted in a way that it is approachable, but it's not so high level that it is useless, and it's not so specific it's irrelevant. That is attention, obviously, but you know, and I applaud you all, the amount of work that has gone into this point to really get the right table set and bring all those perspectives is phenomenal, but and then is my big thing. So please drive towards and then that's all. No need. That's all.
Thanks, Council President. Can I just say, I mean, I think I'm on a similar crusade.
Good.
I really hope that what this future vision helps us achieve is one, a sense of alignment, because we do need to activate that next generation of civic-minded leaders from every sector. Because, I mean, no one's going to save us but us, right? And we live in the most extraordinary place in the world. I really believe that in my heart. And we have so much great leadership and ideas, but what we need is that will to act. And we build that will by doing things like this.
Awesome. Thank you. Councilor Novick.
First of all, it's really exciting to hear about this work. And I will just let my network know about the engagement opportunities. Since my network tends to trend old, I will ask them to tell their children and grandchildren about the engagement opportunities. Councilor Gonzalez, you're young, so I'm going to forgive you for this. But if you ever again come before an audience that includes old people, and you talk about 1992, and you talk about Bill Clinton, and you talk about songs, and you're talking about a future vision, for the love of God, mention that Bill Clinton's campaign theme song was "Don't Stop Thinking About Tomorrow" by Fleetwood Mac.
I'll take a note of that, Councilor.
Thank you, Councilor Novick. Councilor Cannell. I'm sorry, Councilor Smith, are you still in the queue?
No.
Okay, sorry. Councilor Cannell.
Thank you, Council President Dunphy. So I really just want a couple points that I didn't get to before. I appreciate the conversation about youth. I also love the work with Next Up. I want to shout out to the young people who are involved. Whatever gets you involved is a good thing. And also agree that looking at places like Summer Works is a good place to look. I wanted to agree with Councilor Green's point earlier about climate change being central to it, and specifically suggest talking to Sunrise PDX as well. And I also wanted to agree with both Councilors Ryan and Dunphy about the arts, and recommend coming and doing an event at the all ages music venue in my district, the Offbeat. Yeah. And would love to help with that in any way I can. And obviously it's also Councilor Turtle Guinea's district, so I'm sure she has the interest there too. I had a question around the slide that had the flow chart in it. It talked about, and you mentioned drivers of change, and you mentioned a few things on that list, some of which are completely inexorable, like climate change, right? We can affect it as a human race, but we can't necessarily stop what's already baked in. There are other things that aren't fully, the die has not been cast on them. You mentioned AI. And I think Portland and the metro area could very easily be a leader in advancing AI, in regulating AI, in opposing AI, or just be a floating leaf that goes wherever the country or world as a whole are going. And so I'm trying to understand, do you have a list of what you consider drivers of change? And can we talk for a moment about how baked in those are as assumptions to what is going to happen, or what what this has to exist in contrast with?
Fantastic question. I mean, we have an army of people working on those drivers of change. I'm looking at Jess here.
Yeah, thanks for the question, Counselor. That work falls within the scope of Institute for the Future, who I just mentioned. They are just getting going on that. And the purpose in this project is not necessarily to investigate every last driver of change that's out there. There are so many different forces shaping where we're headed as a region, where the world is headed, the country, but really to hone in on those that have been identified by the Commission, by Metro Council, and the communities that those bodies represent as the things that people are most interested, concerned, worried about coming at us in those next 50 years. We are going to be meeting with them very shortly to hear about what those initially 3 areas are that they're going to be investigating and bringing research to us about. That will be available publicly. We're going to be asking them not just to create a boring 15-page report, but also to be creating ways of communicating that research that are publicly digestible. So you are likely to see videos that are really pitched at a public audience to communicate what are those drivers, how could they impact this region. It's not decided yet whether one of those will be AI, whether it will be sort of technology more broadly writ, whether it's demographics. We're still working on defining exactly what those topics will be. That will be coming to Metro Council on June 16th is where they're going to have a little bit more of a public preview of what those drivers are. We'll also be talking about it at the May Future Vision Commission meeting. So those will be sort of the first public spaces where we're talking about what the topics are and deciding whether or not there are other further ones that those groups and their communities are interested in hearing more about.
Okay, so earlier, Councilor Gonzalez had mentioned 3 specific things: AI, misinformation, climate change. You're saying those are examples, not necessarily the 3 that will be leading the charge?
That is correct. Those are examples.
Yeah, just trying to illustrate some things that I think we can anticipate, will be drivers of change, but I think many of us feel are really influential factors in our society right now.
So would I be understanding it correctly if I said these are things that are currently trends that are leading to some anticipation that they might have an effect on the context in which our visioning might live and might be implemented? Am I understanding correctly how you're using this concept?
That I'd say is a fair characterization. Yeah, I mean, a driver of change is a major trend that is moving in some direction that will influence this region. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm asking, this might seem like a really small thing to ask about. The reason I'm asking about it is because I think so many things in the AI space specifically, nobody asked for. Some company is just ramming this down your throat. We have to opt out of things that should really be opt in. And, I don't know if anyone saw this, but the shoe company Allbirds.
Yeah, I saw that.
Switched. Yeah, they... For those who don't know, they decided to stop doing sneakers and start doing AI, and the stock went up by like 175, 200% immediately. So there's a incentive to chase this, but the consumer activity, I don't want it to necessarily be considered that it's absolutely going to be a thing that we're all using in the future. And I think this applies to a lot of these trends, but I think the way you described it indicates that there's an opportunity to say this isn't necessarily baked in, and that's the context I'm leading to.
Definitely.
Go for it.
Oh, sorry. I will say I think that one of the other sort of themes and just philosophies of this work that we've been trying to inhabit is that a driver of change might be something that's doing A right now, but it could do B through Z in the next 50 years, right? Like, it's a time horizon of uncertainty. And so that's also just something that we're really trying to continually bring up as a theme and really imbue this process with, that these are things that are happening right now. They may move in different directions where, as you said, Portland could be a driver of this thing and influence it in a particular way, or we could just go with the flow. And that we're also really trying to give people a sense that there is agency in their role in the future, right? It's not predetermined. So uncertainty is uncomfortable, but it's also a space of change and agency.
Yeah, and I think on top of that, recognizing that these drivers of change will be out there, but how do we want how do we want to like push back on those things or push with them as well, right? I think for the conditions of the humans that will inhabit this place or the animals or our rivers and whatnot, we can see these things and then kind of try and anticipate, well, what are the hard questions that we want to delineate from that, and then use that to make aspirations and decisions. I was talking with someone that worked on the 1995 plan a few months ago, and they're like, well, we didn't even have an iPhone. I mean, just crazy to think the amount of things that could change even within a few years of that plan, and we might miss the mark on some things, but for the most part, I do think that the 95 plan, when I read it and when I see the 2040 growth concept and some of the elements that came from that, I'm like, wow, we're really living in a world that someone designed for us. And now that our generation gets this opportunity to kind of revision that, refresh that, feels important. So I want to make sure we have as much information as possible to kind of cast the future. And this future vision will inform the next growth concept, which influences, a significant amount of our region's growth pattern and our infrastructure. So there's like the really tangible things, like what are we going to build on this street corner? But then anyway, yeah.
Yeah, and I really appreciate the way that was characterized, that we're talking about building the world as opposed to having somebody else's vision applied to us. I would just wanted to throw into the conversation around this, the idea of increasing diversity, declining overall birth rates. There are trends that are demographic that are part of this context, increasing economic inequality. Hyperinflation. These are all things, and increasing resource costs specifically. Many of these are related to each other. For example, increased costs of water is largely tied to the use of AI, but we'll get to that. I wanted to quickly, last two things. I appreciate Councilor Ryan's comments on the age distribution and people moving in. Good jobs are really important. I know Councilor Smith, Pertolgini, and Ryan all talk about this, but I also want to bring up affordability because the reason young people aren't buying houses is that they're generally broke, inequality is skyrocketing, taxes on the rich aren't high enough, and costs are going up faster than wages. And so similarly, when we talk about school enrollment, not building enough housing units with 2 or more bedrooms and cramming in more studios and 1-bedrooms into the same space directly correlates with whether or not young families who are renting can move into an area. And I think that there's conversations on the city side about how to do, moving away from measuring the number of units to talking about the number of people housed. And I wanted to just shout out the section on carrying capacity in the 1995 report,
Yeah, wild.
which was super interesting as well. Yeah. And then lastly, I want to pick up back on the thread from Council President Dunphy and connect that to my earlier question about how we check back in on this, because there are going to be parts of this that are not implemented by the local jurisdictions that have authority over it for those things that are in the gap between what this vision might include and what Metro directly does. And those things might be because of political differences, and that's okay. If the election yields a mayor or council who has a different vision, then obviously the voters have spoken. But sometimes it's going to be because of the lack of communication or coordination or planning at the level of the people that can actually do it, or as Council President always points out, implementation of those plans. So I'd love to see like a built-in cadence in this of how that's checked in on. To have it be something that isn't just a beautiful PDF, or I guess to the 1995 folks, a beautiful binder that sits somewhere. Thanks.
Yeah. Okay, colleagues, we are 1 hour and 10 minutes over at this point. Councilor Ryan, you get the last word.
Okay, thank you, Council President. That's a heavy responsibility. Councilor Canal, first of all, thank you for the AI dialogue. That was really smart. I appreciated that. And I do have to say that the young families I'm talking to that are moving out, it's yes, everyone's complaining about affordability everywhere. They're saying that it's impossible for them to justify staying here because they can't make it here, where they can if they move somewhere else, because it's just not a climate that allows them to build their entrepreneur spirit like they'd like. And I think that's a hard truth for us to sometimes just sit with. I wanted to just ask a very technical question. Do you have anyone at the table from the cannabis industry?
Directly, no.
There's not someone on the commission from the cannabis industry. I I also just want to note, like, the commission is the body that is developing and recommending this work, but their job is to hear from the community. And so we are trying to set tables that, supplement the people who are on the commission. But interested in why you asked the question and sort of what.
About cannabis?
Yeah.
Because it's our number one cash crop that we made legal a while ago, and somehow we're squandering the opportunity. And when I go out and listen to that sector, they're full of challenging complaints for all of us to listen to. And so I think we have an opportunity there, and we don't need to squander it. I kind of say wine, weed, and women's sports. Those seem to be like part of our positivity and prosperity right now. So you better lean into it and not squander what's close to you, that's organic to you. And so that's why I ask. And so I assume you have the other industries that are connected to that.
Council
the
President.
other Ws.
Council President, I think that you're having us end on the future vision being wine, weed, and women's sports. I just want to note that.
I had a lot of fun with my final word.
Pretty good to me, yeah.
The meeting minutes show.
Yeah. So it's just hard when you are from here and that's our number one cash crop, and then we finally make it legal, and somehow we're not taking advantage of that. Like, something's wrong with that.
Thanks, Councilor. I think just to wrap up, I think you're talking about specific industry and their involvement in this. And I just want to end by saying it is not the Metro vision, it is the people's vision. And we will be successful if once the document, if people from across the region, from every walk of life, see that and they say, that is why I am here. That is what makes me an Oregonian. That is what makes me a member of this region. And so I think there's a lot of heavy work to do there to update from the heavy lifting from 1995. But I'm excited. And again, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for this organic conversation and for the marching orders. Yeah.
Thank you all for being here today.
Thank you, Council
Thank you.
Colleagues, it is 4:26. I need to give our staff a 10-minute break, and then we're coming back here. Please be back here at 4:35, and we are going to start the next item. We will not probably hardly get into it at all. See you in 10 minutes. do I need to hold this thing over? Okay, colleagues, we are back. We do not have enough time to get into the substance of this item today, unfortunately. So we are going to postpone, we're going to reschedule this for another future date without, unless there's any objection, I'd like to move to adjourn for the day. Any objection?
President, no objection. I just would love to make sure we get to this at some point in not too long.
This will be at the top of an agenda, hopefully very, very soon. Any objection? Okay, seeing none, we are adjourned.